Hello and welcome to the OMFL Atlanta Falcons review. I'm your host, Mike Fleury, and in this week we're going to cover weeks 13, 14, 15, I believe. That is Green Bay, New Orleans, the second time, and the game I just finished playing tonight against the Philadelphia Eagles. To start the show, however, I'm going to break down the playoffs as they stand right now. So at the beginning of this week, Carolina and I were virtually tied. Actually, I believe we had the exact same record, so that's not virtually tied. We were, in fact, tied. He has gone on a 3-game losing streak, making it basically my division to lose, and lose I have. I beat Green Bay, as we'll discuss in a little bit, but 2 losses to 2 of the, let's just be honest, as far as records go, 2 of the worst teams in the league so far. Definitely top 6 or 7 in the draft this year teams. Good players, but struggling seasons, and I lost to both of them in tough games. We're going to talk about both of them, but those losses have effectively crushed my season. I keep saying this is not the year I intended to compete. This is a year ahead of time. I wanted to rebuild the team. I have a lot of money in the offseason to rejigger the defense the way I want it. But I had the division basically handed to me on a platter, with Carolina being on such a bad streak. If you take away their games against me, they are 4-8 this year. And if you take away my games against them, I'm 7-5. And coming into the New Orleans game, I was 7-3, and 2 of those losses were Sim Game and CPU. I was having a really good season, and I'm kind of choking it all away, which sucks because you're not going to be presented with a division this ripe for the taking very often. Next season, I'm probably going to have to compete with all 4 teams, and hopefully my team's ready to go by then. We have some off-season plans. Maybe we'll talk about those in the coming weeks. But this was really the one where I could have put my stamp on the NFC South, and I have just failed to do so. We need a combination of 3 games in the last 3 games, and what that means is 3 wins, 3 losses for Carolina, any combination there within. They have games left against Kansas City, who are kind of up and down this year. Then they play, I want to say they play Chicago, another team that's been kind of up and down. And then they play New Orleans, who's streaking, but you just never know what Saints team's going to show up for him. It's not his fault. He plays fine. But the team is very inconsistent on whether or not they show up to play for him. And my season might be depending on them. It really sucks to have put myself in this situation. How I got here? Well, let's just jump into the Green Bay game. The game against the Packers was one of those games that nobody seemed to want to win. You know what I mean? He was playing with Brock Purdy, so basically a free agent signed quarterback. And that 85 throw power really showed up in some of those passes that he threw. His defense was incredible. My defense was very opportunistic. We both threw for 155 yards and multiple interceptions. But my team, it was kind of one of those things where Brock Purdy would throw to a pass to what was going to be an open receiver, but because the ball took so long to get there, it kind of floated, gave my defense a chance to get back in the play and pick the ball off. I think people often equate throw power to distance. Turns out, I've watched a video on this. While it does affect distance to the tune of max yards, so Brock Purdy could throw the ball like 72 yards, but Josh Allen can throw it 80. Odds are that's not a situation that's going to come up very often, throwing the ball 70 to 80 yards in the air. Probably not going to happen. We're not going to worry about that. But what it also affects is the amount of time needed for the ball to get from the quarterback's hand to a receiver downfield, because the ball kind of floats more when you have less throw power. So, if you're throwing a crossing route, for example, the ball from Josh Allen's hand will get to the receiver faster, giving the corner less time to speed burst and catch up. Whereas Purdy, the opposite is true. So that is what we saw in this game quite a few times. Just my corners and my DBs getting back into plays that they otherwise probably wouldn't if he'd had his own starting quarterback. My offense was pretty stagnant, all things considered. Granted, I had 121 yards with Bijan Robinson and 76 with Little, so my rushing game was fine. My rushing game was great. My passing game, I just couldn't do much with it. Now, here's a fun thing. Matthew Stark ends with 118 yards. He is long as 70, which means outside of that one run, he had 48 yards on 17 carries, like 2.5 yards per carry, give or take. There was a point in the game where he'd because that run, that touchdown run, you'll see it in the video. I'm gonna splice the game film in. It was the first run of the game. After that point, we completely locked him down. At one point, it was like 10 carries for 88 yards, so 9 for 18 at one point, outside of that one run. So we did a really good job keeping him in check after he started the game by kicking down our door. So I was really pleased with that overall. You never want a huge touchdown, but if you're going to have a huge touchdown against, it might as well be the first play of the game. Because if you lock him down the rest of the game, you're fine. The game... so, Priest hated this. You're going to see it in the video. End of the game, we're tied at 20. I think it was 20? Was it 20? Yes, it was 20. And I've got almost no time left on the clock. So I'm just chucking, hoping for something. And I throw a ball downfield. And I don't know what his corners were doing. Maybe they're making plans after the game. But they basically stopped to the either side of BTJ, Brian Thomas Jr., and just like have a conversation while Brian Thomas Jr. stops on like a fly route, turns around, catches a pass for 47 yards, gets tackled. Now we have the ball inside like his 20 to kick the game-winning field goal. Got him to use his timeouts, kick the game-ending field goal. But that was a play that should never happen. That should not have been a catch. He messaged me right after the game. He said that was should never have been a catch, and I was like, I agree with you, man. Crazy, and that's how we got this game. So maybe this is like you'll hear in a minute. This, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm filming this after the Saints game, which we're going to discuss in a minute. This game might have been the reason the Saints game went the way it did. There might have been a little bit of football karma coming back at me. But overall, anyways, I really liked how my defense played. Woodson had an interception. Baker, Bernard, interceptions. It was a great game that gave us a lead in our division, which is important because we need to win our division by at least one game. We cannot tie. So Fluky though it was, we needed that win. This leads us into the next week against the New Orleans Saints, where the uh, train of my season began to derail, basically. When it came to the second Saints game, truth be told, I kind of got in my own head about midway through the game. Somewhere in the third quarter, I went up 24-7, and I couldn't help but remember the previous week or the previous game against the Saints, and watching the replay back, and just you know remembering that stream. And I just got in my own head, like, am I running enough man? Oh, maybe I should run zone here. But no, Nate complains when people run zone on third down, so I should run man. And then he'd kill my man. And even when it called for zone defense, I would run man. And then I finally ran zone, and he happened to pick that apart because he expected it. But, when it was like, oh, I can't run this particular run that I like to use because I used it last game and he complained about it, and it was silly things. It's entirely my fault. I can't let somebody else's enjoyment of the game matter to me. Like, we're supposed to. I remember last year Nate was talking to me about something, and he said that, like, we shouldn't ruin other people's fun, by, like, giving up too early or just coming in with, like, bad attitude about it, because the game was terrible. But like, at the same time, if I'm gonna stomp on somebody's throat, figuratively speaking, I can't worry that they're having a good time and am I calling the right defenses that they'll enjoy me running. Like, that's such a stupid mentality, but I got locked inside of it, and the next thing I know, Anthony's picking apart my defense. Their run game was shut down pretty well. My run game was doing pretty effectively, 104 yards. And even with all of this, I still managed to get down to the 1 yard line. Final play of the game. I saw a hole. I attacked it. We got held up at the, I don't know, 1 inch line and didn't get it. If I could redo that play, I maybe try to hurdle inside, maybe, to try to get an animation where they flip you. Or maybe I try to bulldoze the run, but I don't know. I don't know how he didn't get there. Um, I mean, to his credit, in the second half, Nate played basically perfect football. I think he missed a field goal, was the thing that gave me a chance at the end. But I mean, he was picking apart my secondary. They couldn't get anything going. It was weird because it felt like on a couple plays my defense was like lagging behind. They weren't jumping routes like they usually do, and give him credit. He saw holes in my defense in that second half, and he found ways to exploit them. Uh, Shut down most of my passing game. I threw 2 interceptions, I think. Um, yeah, he threw two as well, but I ended up 17 of 26. Shouldn't be throwing that much, if I'm honest. And yeah, it was a perfect second half from the Saints, and I got in my own head. It's a game I should have won, and I knew Carolina had lost, so I was kind of thinking like, oh, if I win this one, I can lock in more towards the playoffs, and I choked it. That's all I can say. I choked it. The Saints were a 2-win team at the time. Like, later on that day, he went on to beat the Minnesota Vikings, so now he's a 4-win team. And, I mean, leave it to Nate to ruin his draft stock in the last, 5 weeks of the season. He does that almost every season. But, kudos to him. He made a great couple plays, and he won, but oh, I really needed this game, and the letdown of this game kind of leaked into the next game, which was against the Eagles. So let's get into that one. The Eagles game was incredibly frustrating. His offense wasn't exactly high powered. Like, it wasn't taking the top off and blowing me up, but I couldn't do anything to stop him. Jalen Hurts goes like 12 of 17, 3 touchdowns, a pick later on in the game. But like, it was efficient and moving the ball, and it felt like my defense was literally tripping over themselves. There was a play early on the game. My corner is like glued to his receiver, doesn't make a play on the ball. My safety comes down, tackles my corner, and he just like walks in for a touchdown. Later on in the game, I'm manned up on one of his receivers, um, and I'm trying to backpedal, and my corner sucks up, pulls him right out of position. He hits like a 25-yard play or some shit, and sets up a first and goal. And like, I felt like I knew what route was coming, and I ended up being right. It was a deep cross, and I felt like I had seen that formation enough times in other people's playbooks that I had a pretty good idea of what was coming. And my corner gets sucked out of position. It's just absolutely frustrating. And just my defense wasn't tackling. Their running game was much better than you would think, given that he only ran the ball with a running back, anyways. Uh, it was 17 times for about just over 100 yards, but I couldn't. You know, Trent Herring was gashing me. Saquon Barkley was playing well. This Tyler Batty was okay. Like, he was 3 of 16. Jalen Hurts was escaping the pocket to the point where I started just kind of copying and doing the same thing. Penix went 4 for 20. And my running game was pretty good. 18 of 94 for Bijan, 9 of 55 for Little. But it's just that it was frustrating. I took a 17-14 lead. And then I had a chance to go up more, and I made a stupid decision. This was entirely my fault. I'm running the ball well. I'm inside his 5. Second down, I'm thinking, why don't we just try a pass? And the problem is, I called a pass where 2 routes are just a little too close to each other. He managed to cover them both, picks off the ball. I'm pretty sure he just goes down, scores a touchdown to go up. Or at the very least, he goes down, and if he turns the ball over or punts the ball or whatever in that drive, it completely negates all of the momentum I had. He eventually goes down, scores a touchdown to take a lead, and just honestly, I was just out of my mind by that point. I was just so mad with how everything had gone. At that point, that interception, that I missed a field goal, which would have put me up 6. If I kicked 2 field goals, I'm up 9 points, and the game's over. So, and now I'm like trying to figure out what to do. I'm getting away from my game plan. I'm throwing the ball to the wrong players, to the wrong parts of the field, and the game ends, and he beats me, and it's a game that I feel like I should have won. He played great, don't get me wrong. Like, I don't want to take anything away from him. Same as I don't want to take anything away from Nate. They played a good game. I just feel like this was a game that I should have won, and I just let it slip away. And because I let it slip away, you know what I mean? Like, now I'm in a situation where I'm struggling to make a playoff run here. I need, as I said in the early part of the episode, I need 3 wins or 3 losses from Carolina or a mixture of there within. And I've got 2 tough games coming up. I don't know if I have those wins in me. I don't know if I keep playing like this, I'm not going to beat I might not even beat the Bucks, but I'm definitely not going to beat the Steelers or Broncos if I keep playing like this. So now I'm just kind of in my own head. Coming down to the final stretch of the season, incredibly frustrating. To hear from Nate, we're about to wrap up, so changing subject quickly. To hear from Nate, kind of sounds like we're going back to All-Pro for next season. He seems rather disappointed. He seems to like the way this plays. I'm still on the fence. I don't know. I don't love the way it plays. I think sometimes we get really goofy things happen a little too much, especially when it comes to like tackling and some of the coverage. It's either OP or completely irrelevant, and it feels really weird. At least All-Pro is consistent in that, they might be a step behind, they might not be as tight, but you have a pretty good idea of where they're going to be. And this just feels like they're a little too quick, and they do a lot of really stupid things. And, the pursuit angles are even worse because they're kind of ahead of where they should be on some plays, on tackling and coming down and getting the ball. So, I don't know. I'm still kind of torn. The statistics say that we are playing the same amount of close games, the same amount of blowouts. We're throwing more interceptions. We're throwing fewer touchdowns. I don't know if that's a good thing. That's kind of a, your mileage may vary kind of situation, but it sounds like we're going back to All-Pro, which is going to just throw me off again, honestly, because I only know how this Falcon team plays on All Madden. And if we're being completely honest, I should be... I'm 7-7 right now, and I probably should be 10-4. So I know if I fix the parts of the team that are wrong, I can be a really good team next year. But and part of what's wrong is like me, my decision making, my playbook. I'm constantly changing my playbook, adding new plays, trying to find things that work. Trying to not just be a short field team, but also make you respect the deep ball so that I can pick apart underneath better, so I can run the ball better. But, we'll see what happens. We'll see if we switch, if we go back. We'll find out. Nate's gotten to the point where he's starting to threaten not running the league back next game. So, we're getting to the kind of midpoint of the cycle, because Nate's already like, we'll see if there's a league next year. And I'm like, all right, buddy, we've said that for the last, 4 games. So you definitely know we're in the late stages of Madden 25. when Nate starts getting a little trigger happy about blowing up the league. So we'll see what happens. That's going to be about it. I got 2 games. I want to do another episode after the games against Buccaneers and Steelers. This is only episode 8, so maybe I do Buccaneers, Steelers, Broncos for episode 9, then I do a season wrap-up, and I'll look to the off-season episode for my final episode of the season. So we're getting right down to the nitty-gritty. Got to write some articles, got to do a couple more... I lost my train of thought on that one. Got to do a couple more... videos, highlight videos. Be nice to win a game. Maybe I'll do one on the Saints game. I don't know. That game really just pissed me off, so I'm not sure I'm going to want to relive that one or the Eagles game at this point, but we'll see. I got to get a couple more of those in there. So anyways, thank you for listening. For the OMFL Atlanta Falcons review, I've been Mike Fleury, and as always, I'll try to do better next time.